ECT cripples everyone who undergoes it. As one of shock's most zealous supporters, psychologist Harold Sackheim stated under oath,
"Altered cognition is the most common side effect of ECT, that memory loss occurs, it's universal, and in some individuals it can be profound."
Altered cognition is no light matter. It means a fundamental worsening of the highest centers of brain function, controlling emotional awareness, self-insight, judgment, and memory. And loss of memory is the first thing ECT victims notice.
It wasn't until I was at Shoal Creek that I saw a psychiatrist. And little did I know, after I signed myself in freely, that I couldn't leave for 72 hours. I wouldn't leave my room. I couldn't be around other people. I was terrified, and every time I went for another treatment of ECT, I got more and more paranoid. My head was exploding for days. I couldn't do anything but fall on the bed and sleep for 16 hours or something. I'd have to write everything down and then remember where I wrote it. My family would tell me, "Look at your book. Look at your book." I had to carry this book around with me all the time. My first service dog I got because if I left the apartment to go check the mail, I would get lost. I couldn't remember the number of the apartment. I'd just wander around. When I applied for disability, I had to go to the office and take some kind of test. I couldn't tell them my name. I couldn't tell them where I lived. I couldn't tell them how to get to my house. I couldn't tell them the president. I couldn't tell them anything. And my older sister told me that they asked her, "Is she like this all the time?" And she said, "Pretty much."
I spent 30 years working in the psychiatric system, principally as a clinical psychologist. And during that time, I saw numerous patients who'd received electroshock. I spoke with numerous psychiatrists who delivered electroshock. And it was really after that I became kind of intrigued as to what was going on and why were these people delivering it. And more to the point, why did so many of my patients have long-term memory problems? There's a thing called anterograde amnesia, which is you lose your memory for everything after the shock, so you don't create new memories. And then there's retrograde amnesia, which is you lose memories for things immediately before the shock.
There's only been a few studies done in the last 33 years on permanent amnesia over the long term, 6 months or greater. And what they found, when they look for it, they find it. But they tend just not to look for it.
They knew about permanent memory loss a long time ago, and they actually instructed the field to say that it wasn't permanent, that it wasn't long-term, to use words such as transient, words such as spotty, words such as temporary, to minimize these adverse events.
But outside their clinics, psychiatrists will freely confess that memory loss is a prominent feature of ECT.
Clearly there are risks with ECT. That's been well established for a long time. Some people have regretted doing it because of memory impairment.
Memory loss occurs when patients get electroconvulsive therapy.
The amnesia problem with memory.
They have some memory problems that persist more than we'd like.
While someone's going through ECT, they have pretty profound memory loss.
Sometimes, they can impact the patient pretty severely.
It's like a little volcano inside the brain.
You get more bang for your buck with ECT. If you pardon the pun, you know.
But shock psychiatrists rarely make such candid confessions to their patients.
The industry has variously represented that ECT's benefits exceed its disadvantages. They don't deny that there are disadvantages to ECT, they minimize them. It's a sales pitch.
And it's pitched by PR firms who provide talking points to media-trained psychiatrists.
ECT is the fastest and most effective treatment that we have.
It's the most effective treatment that we have today for severe depression.
Single most effective treatment we have for
Is
depression.
the most effective
really
treatment.
effective for depression. It's more
ECT
effective
is
than
more
medication.
effective than antidepressant
More
therapy.
effective than many of the psychotropic
ECT
medications.
remains number one.
More than medication, more than therapy, more than ketamine.
One of the most effective treatments for anything in medicine.
But their parroted lines are spin, not science.
Shock psychiatrists blame all kinds of adverse effects of ECT on the patient or their underlying mental condition. For example, memory loss or inability to make executive decisions are blamed on the person's underlying depression when it's actually an effect of the ECT.
In addition to inflicting head injury, ECT can cause damage throughout the body.
That's why when you get ECT, there's a crash cart there in case the heart goes into an abnormal rhythm. And if that happens, the doctors have that there in order to bring the person back to life.